Today we have an exclusive interview with the Busio brothers, Gianluca Busio and Matteo Busio. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Filippo and welcome to Tactical Managers TV. Today we have a great episode, a great interview/hangout with Matteo Busio, which currently works as a scout for Venezia, and Gianluca Busio that currently plays for Venezia in the U.S. men's national team. The interview was very good. We talked about MLS, Serie A, U.S. men's national team, what a scout does, what his job is in Venezia, and much more. So before we start, make sure to hit that like button. I won't be requesting during the interview. Sit back, relax, enjoy as we bring on the Busio brothers. Now we got it.
Yeah, we figured it out.
All right, everyone. Today we have the Busio brothers here on the channel. But before we start, there's one disclaimer. We were going to have only Matteo in the channel originally. But like every younger brother, Gianluca just intruded into the episode. So first, Matteo, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. How about you?
Doing great too. About you, Gianluca?
Yeah, also doing well.
Do you normally just intrude on your brother stuff like this?
Yeah, sometimes.
Wait, how much older are you, Matteo?
5 years.
5 years. Okay, so you're much older, brother. Yeah.
Yep.
But boys, just to get started right away with the episode, to not take much of your time here, you're all here in the United States roughly a year ago. Yes, a year ago you were still here because Gianluca got the move during Gold Cup, if I'm not mistaken. So just for starters, how was the move there to Venezia? You guys knew Italy already, right?
Yeah, so my dad's from Brescia, probably like an hour and a half here from Venice. So we grew up coming here like every Christmas and every summer. So we spend like a month here, probably maybe even longer than a month in the summer. And then we come for like all of December and Christmas. So we were pretty familiar with it. But, you know, as we got older and we were both playing, we didn't get to come as much. So it kind of faded. But we weren't like completely new to it when we moved over here now.
And you both spoke Italian before going?
He did, yes. He came
What
when
about
he came when he was a little older, so he got to understand the language more. But I never really got onto it.
How's it now?
Better now. I think when I was born, my dad was terrible in English, so he spoke to me in Italian like as a baby. So like my first words were in Italian, but as he learned English more, he just stopped using Italian as much. So like when him and my sister were born, he didn't use it as much.
So I actually know a little bit of Italian because it's similar to Portuguese, and part of my family, you probably noticed by the first name, is Italian. Part of my family in Brazil.
Filippo, yeah.
Yeah, pretty common there. Filippo Inzaghi, much better player than I am. Filippo Inzaghi. Now, I wanted to get both of your perspectives in terms of the United States and Italy in two things, actually, right? Because I come from Brazil from my childhood and I'm able to compare, and I wanted to get a little bit of Italy. I've never been to Italy, even though I have some Italian roots, including my team. I'm a Palmeiras fan in Brazil. I wanted to hear from you two this, and now you two can figure out on your own who's going to speak first. I'm not calling anyone. The first thing I wanted to ask is MLS has improved a lot the past decade. I'm sure, Matteo, you're closer to my age, so you definitely followed it. Gianluca was a little bit younger, but he definitely caught on to the last few years. My question to you two is this. In terms of Serie A and MLS, what differences have you noticed in terms of technique, tactics, just the overall game? How close is it? I think no one is crazy enough to say MLS is at the level of Serie A, but is there still a big gap in your opinion?
You can go. You played in it.
Who wants to take the hot potato first?
Yeah, I think for me, mainly, I think one of the biggest things is just the relegation. I think, well, for me especially, I'm on a team where, you know, we're fighting relegation. So I think, you know, the games now are even more pressure than anything I've kind of experienced in MLS. And obviously, I think MLS, you kind of get a taste of it in playoffs. You know, if you lose, you're out. So, but I think here, every game is so important that, you know, if you lose one game, it could be the difference between staying up and going down. I think the MLS obviously doesn't have that. I don't know if it'll happen at some point, but it doesn't have that. So you can't kind of replicate that pressure on the lower teams who, you know, need to stay up. And, you know, I'm experiencing that for the first time, and I was never really, you know, used to that before. So that's the main thing for me. And then obviously I think everybody knows the levels are just a little bit higher. It's a top 5 league in the world, and the players are at the highest levels and the best in the world. So I think for me also just the kind of the punishment aspect. I think we make a mistake, they punish you. I think it's happened a lot to us. We'll play a good game, and then 70th minute comes, you make one little mistake, and you're down 1-0. I think it's not as forgiving as the MLS. I would say. I think in the MLS, when you play the better teams, obviously it happens, but every once in a while you can make a mistake and get away with it. But here it's pretty much, the attackers are so good and clinical that you make one mistake and the game could be over.
Yeah, it's something I've noticed. So what about Matteo? You've been obviously going, and we're going to talk about your job too very soon. You've been following super close. You followed MLS obviously because you were here and your brother was playing. What do you see? Also adding to everything Gianluca said.
I mean, I enjoy what Gianluca said. I completely agree with the pressure point of it. Like, you don't really see this in American sports where people are fighting for, what their next contract's going to be. It depends on if they're on Serie A and Serie B, how their lifestyle is depending on it. So, and they have like a whole, like every city basically is behind it. Like, for example, we got to eat at dinner last night. There's a crazy Venezia fan showing us her Venezia tattoo and telling Gianluca she didn't like how he played the other day. So it's just like, it's a different type of pressure. And, it's just something that you don't really see in U.S. sports. So that's definitely one. But more from like a soccer standpoint, obviously Italian soccer is known to be incredibly tactical, and I think it's still like that. From a technical standpoint, these players, seeing them up close, it's an incredible level technically that I think there's still a decent gap between Serie A and MLS. But I think as we're seeing these days, there's players that in MLS that are capable of playing at this level, even with Gianluca. But I think there's going to continue to be a relationship with players from MLS and American players playing in Serie A. So they've kind of set the pathway and shown that, there is a relationship between MLS and Serie A and that the game translates. So
one question too, in Brazil, what happens very often with the relegation that you talked about, it's very dramatic for the community, right? Because there's sometimes jobs at stake that people live off of that because the revenue just goes down for the team. How much is the community there in Venezia involved with this club? It's pretty big and also I probably should have done research on this too. Venezia is it a newer club? Is it a younger club? Because it's the first time I personally seen them in Serie A, and then I saw this beautiful jersey. I had to get one.
So we're not a new club at all. It's been around for a long time. Our stadium is actually the second oldest stadium in Italy, so it's like a pretty historic stadium. And as you probably know, you can only get there by boat, so it's really unique. Mm-hmm. But it's really different. It's not a new team at all, but we hadn't been in first flight since I think 2000, since Gianluca was born, I think, or maybe even before that. So as a Serie A club, I guess we're relatively new, but the club's been around for a long time.
I was hoping to see Gianluca here with that little espresso picture that went trending.
It's only when I go out in Venice.
Okay. Do you actually drink espresso, or do you have the same problem as Weston McKennie? Because he said he pooped himself when he drinks espresso.
No, I can't say I have that problem. Not yet, I guess. But I don't drink it all the time, but every once in a while.
No, I agree with Weston. The first couple of weeks I was here, I was like, man. But now you get accustomed to it. And now it's fun.
I love espresso.
Yeah,
it's definitely needed. Like on the road, a good espresso will help you out for sure.
So before we move on, Matteo, because I want to talk about your job there in Venezia. You're working currently as a scout. I want to ask Gianluca one thing real quick. Before you moved to, before you played Gold Cup, because when you played Gold Cup, I think it's when you were officially cap tied to the United States. You obviously had the Italian passport, both of you. And were there contacts from the Italian Federation at a youth level, or even senior level, inquiring to you, or even an invitation at one point?
Not that I know of, at least. I think my agent kind of handled all that before, just because I was going to Gold Cup and everything, and we actually had a conversation about it at the time where he was saying, look, you're gonna, if you go to Gold Cup, you're cap tied, you can't really switch, and he was kind of just giving me that option to take. And obviously I grew up in America, and obviously I have my Italian ties, and I love Italy, but I feel like I kind of grew up in the youth national team system, and knew all the guys there and grew up with them. So I kind of felt like I just really had to play for the U.S. team. And also at the time, it wasn't really a thought of mine to play in the Italian national team. Obviously, they were, you know, one of the top teams in the world. So it was kind of in the back of my head, like, it'll probably take me a while to even get to that level. And, you know, I think here in the USA, I had the opportunity to already play for the first team in the Gold Cup. And I just thought that would be a good opportunity. And obviously with all the young guys we have, and, you know, we're trying to do big things with this group, I wanted to be a part of that. And there wasn't much communication from the Italian team. I don't think, at least that I know of, I don't think there was an invitation or anything like that, maybe for a youth camp or something. But, you know, like I said, my agent kind of handled all that, and, you know, he kind of knew that I was more towards the U.S. anyway. So, but obviously now I think playing a couple months in the Serie A, maybe if I wasn't capped, it could have been a different story. You never know, just with the...
Good thing we got you early then.
Yeah, maybe now I'd have to think about it a lot more, but I think I'd always be...
Yeah, you also you kicked off your USMNT career by winning a trophy, World Cup qualifying already, and hopefully by the time we're recording this, the roster hasn't been out yet, but hopefully in March and us taking off to Qatar as well. Yeah. But Matteo, we're going to go back to USMNT very soon. I wanted to talk about your job now in Venezia. And I don't know if even Gianluca is with you on it. I know obviously he's busy playing right now, but you're currently working as a scout with Venezia. Are you working as a scout with the senior team, youth team, or is it broader than that?
So it's probably a little bit broader than that, because I do work with the first team, but I also do scouting for like the academy and stuff like that. Like I actually just had a meeting with the youth league directors before I got back home. So that's the thing I liked about the project, was that it's not a big club where we have, 100 scouts and we have directors, and there's probably 5 or 6 of us really that kind of do mainly the first team, but we also do Primavera, which is our U19s, and then we have 17s, 16s, 15s, which I'm not as involved in, but like it's such a small team that, we all get to see a little bit of everything. And that's really what brought me into it, is that I wanted to be a part of, being a part of a Serie A team is pretty cool, and working with top level teams and seeing top level games. But, I've seen games of all different levels, from youth league, which is like the Youth Champions League, all the way up to, Conference League, Europa League. So, and just leagues that I never really thought I'd pay much attention to, that I'm going to watch these teams now, that there's a lot of talent there that people don't really know about, in leagues that not many people watch. So it's been a really cool experience so far.
Are you looking to add maybe a central midfielder to replace an American in the team?
If we don't get some results, maybe.
No, but in terms of that, would you say you go to, this is a question I actually have to you, because I actually never talked to anyone working with scouting specifically, right? I'll talk to coaches, essentially managers, like Oscar Pareja here in Orlando, a couple Brazilian coaches I know. So when you're making a signing or trying to recruit a player, what is more important for you? Is it the eye test? You go watch the player and you have your own thought on it and opinion, or do you go based off stats?
I'm a believer that stats will back up the video usually, or back up the eye test. So I kind of watch a player on video, and then I'll go look at his stats. But I'm not going to look at his stats and say, he doesn't have the stats, and roll him out, because obviously there's different reasons why people aren't putting up numbers. Like we even have players here that are incredible players that haven't put the numbers up. So you don't want to always go off the stats. And I think also like the situation the players in could also, have a lot of effect on the stats. So you don't want to read too much in the stats, but I think numbers also don't lie very often. So yeah, to always go off your eye test as well. But so I think you got to weigh both of them without giving too much power to one.
The Twitter tacticians there that like to just put like a foot mob rating and just say, oh my God, he was terrible today. It's like, I watched the game and he didn't do bad. I don't know. It's like, you gotta connect both. Stats alone can be misleading. That's the main concern.
You can write a lot of narratives with just using stats.
Yes, you can. And also it depends on where the player's playing, the position he's playing, the system he's playing, right? Sometimes a good player might not play very well because the team's just not well suited for him.
Yeah, exactly.
So back here to Gianluca in regards to the U.S. men's national team. And you played in Gold Cup, and those were intense games. We had to grind out a lot of results, a lot of 1-0 wins that we had to pull off, but who cares? Who cares? We'll take it, and then we go to World Cup qualifying right after the United States having such a successful summer. And World Cup qualifying does seem like it's a different beast. It always has, but you got a little bit of a taste of it in the field from both. You played in Gold Cup. I think you played every game, if I'm not mistaken, or at least you came in. World Cup qualifying, I remember you playing, starting Jamaica, and you played Costa Rica. Is that
So
so you played 2 games.
Minutes, I think. Yeah.
Is there actually a big difference in terms of intensity?
Yeah, for sure. I think Gold Cup, it also helped that we were at home. So, we kind of had our home crowd and our home support. And, it was a little different. I think obviously we wanted to win Gold Cup, but, you lose Gold Cup, you move on to World Cup qualifying. And then I think in World Cup qualifying, it's, if you lose a game, you might not qualify for the World Cup. So it's kind of every game you go out there and you have that in the back of your head that this is to qualify for the World Cup. This is to, make the next step as a team. So obviously it's more intense, and also the other team is thinking that also. So it's kind of 22 guys out there who all have the same goal, and, maybe one of you guys only can get it. So I think there's definitely a different intensity to it. And, obviously I think in the away games, it's even more because, obviously the crowd is going crazy. They're doing everything, that the fans can do, legally, and sometimes not so legal to try to help their team win. And, it's just, it's crazy. Games can get, hectic and dirty and everything because they're trying to just end up in, World Cup. So the intensity is something that I wasn't even used to, even in the Serie A sometimes. There's a couple games where it gets there, but, these games, it's 3 games a window, and, you're trying to win all 3, and, you have to wait 2 or 3 months for the next one. So, you can't leave a bad taste in your mouth after, if you lose the last game, you got to wait another month. So the intensity is crazy.
There's so much at stake, right? Every single week. There's also not. Oh, actually, now there's even more. Not back in the day. The last cycle was a hex, so there was less games, a little bit more room for mistake this time. But it's just, I mean, we feel it as fans too, right? Much more nervous from my end. I don't know if Matteo shares the same. I'm much more nervous in terms of the World Cup than Gold Cup. Like, you pretty much, I guess the players feel in a similar way in that sense. Just like Gold Cup, if we lose, move on. We'll play the next one, try to win it. The World Cup is every 4 years, so kind of have to qualify for it. But what about? I wanted to ask you too about what about Berhalter's shoes? Why does he? I love basketball shoes. And man, who competes with him with that? Is any player capable of competing with him on that?
Players? I think all of us. All of us are very stylish. I think we're
with Greg.
Group. Yeah, I think all of us are stylish in that sense. We're a young group, but I don't know. He pulls out some crazy sneakers that most of the guys wouldn't even wear on a day out. And I like them. We'll have arguments in the bench during the game about if we like them or not. But no, I respect it. I like it, and every once in a while he's after breakfast at camp, he's talking to me about new shoes that are dropping, and he's telling me about shoes that are coming out. I'm like, it should be the other way around a little bit, but it's pretty cool. I like it. I don't think it's anything crazy or anything. I think it's pretty cool to have a coach like that to me, and hopefully we can see what he brings out next game.
With everything that I have to criticize Greg, it's definitely not his shoes.
You can't get on his shoes.
Matteo, I got a question for you about your brother, actually. So we've seen Gianluca play. Actually, if we go back to MLS, I actually saw you play Orlando, and you played as a false 9 that game. You even scored. You remember that? Yeah. You played false 9.
As a false 9.
Yeah, and you scored against Orlando. I've seen you play as a 10. But more recently, you kind of just stayed between the 8 and the 6, 8 and 6, and even in MLS towards the last few games, I think you were playing more the 6. So Matteo, you first. Do you see your brother being more productive at the 6 or the 8, or where would you play him?
Depends on the team we're playing him on, but
you're gonna say the bench? No.
No, I think here in Serie A, I think he plays a lot better as an 8 than as a 6. I think he likes to get more involved. He's more involved in the game as an 8, and he kind of, I think Torino is a good example where he's trying to play as a 6, and I think he starts to, think too much when he's thinking about covering space versus when you gave him a one-on-one, like go guard Pobega, who's an up-and-coming player for the Italian national team, as a top player. You said go go win that duel. And his coach pushed him up there, and it changed the game, and he became much more involved in the game, in my opinion. So I think when he does that, he doesn't have to think much about space and covering ground. It's more just win this duel, win this battle. This is me against him. I think he plays better then, and he's got the legs to go forward and backward. So I think as an 8 is his strong suit, but he's pretty decent as a 6 as well. So it also just depends on the team he's playing in, how much of the ball we're gonna have. I think he's a player that needs to find a rhythm, and if we don't have the ball, then he can kind of find the game as an 8 by picking up second balls and stuff like that. But when he's playing as a 6, if it's a game where we're going to have the ball a lot and he can drop in and get it off the center backs, then, he can show his ability there as well.
Gianluca, where do you see yourself long-term playing them? I know, obviously, the coach can always change you, and we see a lot of players that play the 6, play the 8. But obviously, as you grow on and you reach your prime and develop, there will be a point where you're going to have a main position. You're like, yeah, Gianluca's a 6 that can play as an 8, or an 8 that can play as a 6. Where do you personally see yourself long-term? What do you think is your position?
I think I'm an 8 more. I think it's the position I enjoy more, one, and I think it's where I played mainly in the Serie A. I think the hardest competition I've ever played in, and I think I've done well at the 8 more than the 6 in these games. And I think for me, it's just I have a little more freedom as an 8. I think as a 6, you're the last kind of line of the midfield. You have to, if you get beat, they're straight into the back line. If you lose the ball, they're in on goal. So I think for me, especially as a young player, and it's easy to get in your head. I think for me, as an 8, I felt like I had more freedom to come back and get the ball and kind of build up even as a 6. And we'll have 2 6s, or the 6 moves up and I'll play 6 for a little bit. But as the 8, I feel it's not my job to do that, but I can. So I have the freedom to go back and help them build up, or I can have the more freedom to go forward and play more as a 10. So I think for me, it's kind of to have that, flexibility just in my head, really. Even if I don't do it that much, it's in my head that, like if I can go build up, I can go build up. If I can go forward, I can go forward. And, that's kind of what I like, just to have that, freedom in my head, really. Then obviously I think I cover a lot of ground. I think, I can run for a long time. So I think from the 8, I have more freedom to press it than, obviously come back and help defend. So I think for me, just, the 8 is where I found more comfort in, but also, like you said, it matters the team. At KC, I think I would say 6 if you asked me if I was still in Kansas City, just because we were such a possession-based team that I was getting 100 touches a game. And as a player like me, I don't care where I am. If I get 100 touches, I feel like I can do something with that. And you think we had the ball so much that the defensive part of it was win the ball back as fast as you can. It's not really stay here, cover this space. It's just win the ball back as quick as you can, and we keep it. So I think that's why at KC I was just more comfortable at the 6. But obviously at Venice we don't have the ball as much as I did in Kansas. So it's I can go press to win the ball back, and also when we need to build up a quick build up, I can come back and help.
I actually think the amount of touches you have per game in the Serie A is somewhere between 30 to 40. Mm-hmm. I might be. I cover you weekly, so I know I know this. That I think that's what it is. Matteo, before we wrap up this whole interview hangout, whatever this was, you used to play soccer too a lot competitively, and I saw your podcast with Loon. You had a torn ACL, like me. What position did you play?
It's basically the same as him. Some days I was a 6, some days I was an 8. Other days I was more of an attacking 10, so I literally played all over the park. But
did you two train together?
We grew up playing together a lot. Yeah, we play in they have little turf fields around Italy that we play at a lot. And he trained with my college team even a couple of times, but I was always obviously a lot older, and so I think that actually helped him in his career to play people that are more physical, bigger, older, and so you can tell he started playing at a high level when he was 15. So
yeah.
But yeah, I'd say we grew up playing together for sure.
Now, before we wrap this up here real quick, Matteo, are you going to Orlando if Gianluca is in the roster when we play Panama here? Will you be here in Orlando?
I actually haven't seen him play with the national team yet, so I'd like to, but I don't know. I don't know if they'll allow that one.
I'll be here at the game in Orlando. And,
really?
Yeah, I live in Orlando, and a little bit nervous about this game. It's probably the game that will make us or break us. No pressure, Gianluca.
There's only pressure games until the end of the season here.
Yeah, he comes in. Yeah, pretty much, right? Your next few months are kind of insane in terms of pressure.
Yeah, no, we're in the relegation battle deep in it now, so we got to win some games, and I'm ready for it, but it'll be a nerve-wracking couple months here.
Quite an experience, right?
Oh
For
yeah,
your
no,
age.
definitely. In a couple of years, looking back at this, I definitely think it'll help me.
Things will get better there. Hopefully, by the end of May is when it's over. By the end of May, you're celebrating that you'll stay in Serie A.
Yeah.
And we're heading to Qatar, hopefully.
And hey, that'll be perfect. It's perfect scenario.
A good start to the summer.
Very realistic, though. Very realistic,
Yeah.
to be fair.
Yeah,
it's not
sure.
something that's out of reach. Venezia is right there in the battle in the United States. Knock on wood, obviously, but we are in a comfortable, comfortable. We're on track to qualify.
Exactly.
But boys, I want to thank you all very much for taking the time. Were mainly the topics we wanted to talk about here. I'll keep in touch with you guys. Anything else you guys want to add before you go?
Oh man, it was fun. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no,
not
perfect.
as long as Loon, right? He kept you for a while.
I wasn't in half of that one, so
yeah, you sneaked in. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you.
See you, man.